Thank you for joining me today to hear an overview of Western Australia's emerging critical and battery minerals industries. The economic growth of Western Australia has been so intrinsically linked to mining and resources over the past century, but the emerging economic drivers around transitioning to a resilient low-carbon future by achieving net zero emissions by 2050 from ethical supply chains present an opportunity for Western Australia to provide a reliable and ethical supply of raw battery and critical minerals to the world, plus expand our role in the overall value supply chain in mid and downstream processing. The state government has a strategy to place battery and critical minerals at the forefront of a diversified low-carbon economy for the state in order to meet net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. WA is in a very special situation in that we currently produce all the materials needed to make batteries, which are nickel, cobalt, lithium, manganese, graphite, and rare earth elements. The map on your right highlights where the mines are across the state and also how well located they are to existing roads and connected to ports for export. We also have significant resources of vanadium, which are used to produce energy storage systems, which support charging of electric vehicles and the integration of renewable options into our power networks. But there are considerable opportunities to establish processing facilities that produce higher value battery chemicals like lithium hydroxide, nickel sulfate, and mixed nickel cobalt hydroxide. The map on your right shows the type and location of the processing facilities which are operating or planned for, highlighted by the square with the cross. So you can see processing plants are planned for most of the battery metal mines we currently have, and there is clustering of these facilities around Kwinana, Kemerton near Bunbury, and some of the other strategic industrial areas which have been set aside for this new industry. So we are already witnessing a transformation of our resources sector into a battery metals powerhouse, outlined in the WA government's Future Battery Metals Industry Strategy, which aims to expand the state's midstream processing industry for batteries. One of the key strategies to lowering emissions is through the uptake of electric vehicles, with many companies announcing ambitious policies to expedite this transition. The European Union have announced they will ban the sale of combustion engines by 2035. So projections for EV sales across the world are set to grow exponentially, in particular in the EU, USA, and Asia. So the rationale for establishing a new midstream processing industry lies in this diagram showing the lithium-ion battery value chain in 2017 compared to projected 2025 values, comparing Australia to the rest of the world. Our focus as a state until recently has been producing raw materials for export, represented by the yellow star. Since 2017, we have begun processing our raw materials into higher value battery materials, indicated by the pink star, with BHP now producing a nickel sulfate product from their Kwinana refinery, and there are also 2 lithium hydroxide plants under construction at Kwinana and Kemerton. We have several other processing plants in the pipeline, including a rare earths cracking and leaching plant in Kalgoorlie, under construction by Lynas Corporation. Australia Vanadium are proposing to build a vanadium processing plant near Geraldton. And there is also a graphite hub planned for Collie, plus a separate processing facility at Rockingham. Element 25 are proposing to produce battery-grade magnesium from their operating Butcherbird mine in the Pilbara. And most recently, Iluka received a $1 billion loan from the federal government to construct a rare earths refinery at Eneabba. So moving on to the next stage of the value chain, where the red star is marked, this reflects the process of combining separate battery materials into a single multi-element compound called precursor cathode active materials, or PCAM for short. So you get some lithium, and depending on what type of battery you want to make, you can add nickel, cobalt and manganese in various compositions, or add iron and phosphorus in another combination. This part of the value chain is also where we want to expand the state's role in. The Future Battery Industries Cooperative Research Centre, located in Perth, have announced a cathode precursor production pilot plant project is to be built, which aims to demonstrate Australia's capability to produce cost-effective, high-quality nickel, cobalt and manganese for producing precursor cathode active materials. Another PCAM plant has also been announced for the Kalgoorlie region, with Pure Battery Technology set to construct a PCAM plant with materials from Poseidon Nickel's mines. Now let's look at critical minerals, which are a broad list of minerals selected based on things like economic importance, so whether they are essential across a multitude of industries, supply security. If the supply chain is vulnerable to disruption, this will make the mineral critical. And also if there's a lack of substitutes, so that's the only mineral used for a certain technological application. The list of critical minerals includes some battery metals, plus others needed for manufacturing, technology, energy, defense, and food security. Each country has their own list of critical minerals, which they review and update. This table shows a selection of critical minerals identified by the USA, European Union and Japan, with a comparison to what we have in WA in terms of both resources and mines. We host resources for all the commodities listed, plus we have operating or planned mines for the majority listed. Rare earths is an interesting mineral to look at. USA, EU and Japan have all recognised the need for a secure supply to rare earths outside of China, which currently produces roughly 85% of the world's rare earths. Rare earths are extremely important for their applications in permanent magnets used in electric vehicles and for aerospace and military applications. In particular, the USA are concerned with their own supply and are increasingly looking towards Australia, and in particular Western Australia, to secure an alternative supply to these minerals. Last year, the US Department of Defense signed a major deal with Lynas Corporation to build a heavy rare earth processing facility in Texas. This plant would receive feedstock from the Kalgoorlie cracking and leaching processing facility, which is currently under construction in Kalgoorlie. Another project, Iluka Resources, are also planning to build a rare earth refinery at Eneabba, following a $1 billion loan announced this month from the federal government, which could also open up rare earths to global markets as well. So now let's take a closer look at Australia's own list of critical minerals, which are highlighted by the red outline on the periodic table. The critical minerals currently mined in WA are highlighted in the pale red colour, and the minerals for which we have a defined or potential resources are highlighted in yellow. The official Australian list has recently been expanded in March this year to include high purity alumina and silicon. High purity alumina is a high purity form of aluminium oxide, which is resistant to scratching, corrosion and high temperatures. It is used to produce LED lighting and types of glass, but its use as a coating of anode materials in lithium-ion batteries is particularly interesting. Silicon metal also has the potential for applications in making lithium-ion anodes also. The table highlights just how well endowed WA is to supply critical minerals to the world. But just as important is how we deliver these materials to global markets. Our strict environmental, social and governance frameworks are a great start, but there is even more being done in this space to measure ESG credentials to identify which supply chains are ethical. So now I'd like to move on to some of the work the Geological Survey are doing to encourage the discovery and development of resources for battery and critical minerals. And in last month's webinar, Louisa Dent talked through the Exploration Incentive Scheme, which is one of the survey's flagship programs. And I'd highly recommend you taking a look at that to get a more comprehensive understanding of the EIS program. But I just wanted to recap a couple of projects I think are really cool and relevant to the search for battery and critical minerals. Starting with the co-funded drilling on offer under the EIS, where 50% of drilling costs up to a cap value are refunded to explorers in order to encourage innovative exploration into greenfields and underexplored areas of the state. Since it began in 2009, the program has offered over $110 million in refunds to 1,152 projects, of which about half was taken up by explorers. Notable results from the program include discovery of a high-grade nickel zone at the Beta Hunt underground mine called Gamma Zone 50C, and Ardea Resources drilling of the Western Ultramafic unit identified nickel sulfide mineralisation about 360 metres in an area which had been historically overlooked. And most recently, Lynas confirmed continuation of rare earth mineralisation within the Mount Weld carbonatite to over 1,000-metre drill hole depth, representing a significant exploration target for the company moving forward. In an economic review in 2020, it was reported for every $1 spent under this EIS drilling program, a further $31 is spent across the state. So as well as improving understanding of mineralisation and making discoveries, the broader economic returns of this program are extremely lucrative for our local and rural economies. The next round of applications open on the 1st of August this year, with an additional $2.5 million available each year, which means increased grant amounts and updated criteria for deep hole drilling, so be sure to take a look out on our website. The Murchison 2021 survey is the latest data release under the AusAEM 20 WA program, a collaboration between the Geological Survey and Geoscience Australia. The state now has 90% coverage of continuous airborne electromagnetic surveys at 20-kilometre line spacing or better. We expect full coverage by the end of this year, when surveys of the remaining areas of the east and northeast of the state will be completed by GA and funded by the EIS. The uniform coverage of the AusAEM 20-kilometre space data across the state provides the conductivity context for the almost 1.3 million line kilometres of AEM data from more than 700 targeted surveys registered in our survey's Magix data repository. And we are already seeing the new Murchison AEM data being used to identify EM targets at the prospect scale. Buxton Resources recently announced plans to investigate a bedrock conductor identified along strike from the Ministry project from the Murchison conductivity profiles. And we are seeing other companies including Torque Metals and Rubix Resources using the AEM data to collected from other areas of the state to hone in on specific targets to guide their own exploration efforts. It's really exciting to see our regional AEM data collected at a 20-kilometre line spacing being used in target generation. So if you haven't seen this data yet, it's all available to download through the GSWA Magix system or through Geoscience Australia's e-catalogue. WAMEX is the depository of 150 years of exploration and drilling activity in the state. It represents the ongoing learnings of this industry of where to drill and, just as importantly, where not to drill. It's an incredible resource for explorers. So WAMEX has a new textual search portal with improved searchability of the thousands of reports it holds. And whilst I wouldn't necessarily recommend searching the word gold, it could be very powerful when looking for critical minerals and vectors to mineralisation. There is also a new portal to allow for improved searching of the geochemistry data and the associated drill hole survey data in our WAMEX database. You can now search for drill hole geochemistry data by location, such as tenement, map sheet or WAMEX report number, and get either a raw assay data or a harmonised version where all the data headings have been standardised. Please note the data itself is as reported by companies. There is a lot happening at both the state and federal levels in areas of research, financial assistance and promotion of a battery and critical minerals industry for Western Australia. Starting with research, there are many organisations generating new data and research into finding more resources. These include the Geological Survey, which delivers pre-competitive data to industry, the Minerals Research Institute of Western Australia, which supports applied minerals research, the MinXCRC, which aims to improve mineral discovery and drilling technologies, and the Future Battery Industries Cooperative Research Centre, which aims to grow Australia's role in the battery supply chain. When it comes to financial assistance, as I mentioned earlier, the WA state government funded EIS co-funded drilling program provides $12.5 million per year to explorers. The number of critical and battery minerals proposals accepted has increased considerably over the past years of this program. There are also several funding and loan options from the Australian government. I know we are going into an election cycle, but it is still worthwhile highlighting where federal financial assistance has been directed so far, starting with the Modern Manufacturing Initiative. Grant recipients include the Pure Battery Technologies, who will be given $120 million to construct a PCAM processing plant in Kalgoorlie, and $40 million will go to Australian Vanadium to build a processing plant near Geraldton. There is also a $2 billion critical minerals loan facility to provide loans, bonds, bank security, or working capital support to critical mineral projects. Iluka Resources were announced recently as a $1 billion loan recipient of this program. In the lead up to the election, the Australian government also announced plans to invest $200 million in the Critical Minerals Accelerator Initiative over 5 years. It would aim to help early and mid-stage critical mineral projects to advance through to feasibility. They are drafting the guidelines for this program now and are accepting comments on the program design till early May. So any explorers in the audience, it'd be good to check that out. Also, attracting the right kind of investment into WA's battery and critical mineral sectors by raising the state's profile as a strategic partner and investment destination is another important aspect for me to highlight here. And this is happening at all levels, including both at the federal and at the state level through GSWA's Trade and Invest WA and the Future Battery and Critical Minerals Industries team. And also within the Geological Survey of Western Australia, I will be promoting Western Australia's emerging battery and critical minerals industries to both domestic and international audiences, and I look forward to working across government, research and industry in doing so. So this has been a pretty high-level overview of the economic drivers and new projects opening up in the battery and critical minerals space. So I'd highly recommend anyone who wants to know more to connect with the Geological Survey on LinkedIn, subscribe to our newsletter, and keep listening to our webinar series. Thanks for listening.